Who likes the Beatles? I like the Beatles. Do you like the Beatles? Because Sam Mendes definitely likes the Beatles, apparently. So, according to the Variety, Sam Mendes to direct 4 separate Beatle movies on Paul McCartney, John Lennon, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr. John, Paul, George, and Ringo will each be the subject of a different upcoming feature film. Director Sam Mendes plans to make 4 separate movies, one for each Beatle member's point of view. They will intersect to tell the astonishing story of the greatest band in history. Leading up to their 1970 breakup, according to a press release, McCartney, Starr, and the families of the late John Lennon and George Harrison have granted full life story and music rights for the scripted films. I'm honoured to be telling the story of the greatest rock band of all time and excited to challenge the notion of what constitutes a trip to the movies. Mendes, the Oscar-nominated filmmaker of American Beauty, War Drama 1917, and the James Bond film Skyfall and Spectre, said in a statement. Okay. So, I like that quote. I do like that quote. The reason I like that quote is because of this line here, is we're excited to challenge the notion of what constitutes a trip to the movies. Okay, so he's obviously trying to be innovative with this whole 4 Beatles movie things. Like, he's trying to do 4 of these, like, okay, James Cameron. But apparently that's what he wants to do. And okay, before we get into that, let's talk Sam Mendes first. Sam Mendes has a great track record. Recently, he's been knocking it out of the park. 1917, the Best Picture noms. His Bond movies are great. Maybe not Spectre, but Skyfall is absolutely sensational. So Sam Mendes I have no problem with. The Beatles getting a biopic also have no problem with. They are, I would say, the one musical act that is the most ripe for a biopic right now. Maybe not the one musical act, but the rare few that really need one right now. And you'll understand why I'm not that big of a biopic fan in a sec. But I'm saying, even with that opinion of mine, I still think that sort of Beatles biopic is needed to happen. And we've had iterations of Beatles movie. I mean, we've had Yesterday with sort of Danny Boyle's Yesterday, where it was that about the guy who woke up one day and the Beatles were gone from existence and he stole all their music and became successful. We had that. We obviously had the old John Lennon at the end. So like, yeah, it was a good movie. It was good. It was not amazing, but it was good. It was good. And then we had Nowhere Boy, where it's like the young life of John Lennon being played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, he was great in it. I don't know, I always just tied Nowhere Boy with the fact that Aaron Taylor Johnson was like really young and he met the director who happened to be like 20 years older than him, and they ended up getting married, and it's a bit weird, but that's what I tie Nowhere Boy to. But moving on swiftly, yeah, like I said, I brought it up slightly, but I'm not really a big music biopic fan, and the reason being is they're never truthful. They're never authentic. Like Bohemian Rhapsody was fine. It was a fine movie. Like, people enjoyed it. People had fun time with it. Rami Malek won a little statue. All of that nice stuff. Brian May got to be gassed about being told the Queen story with not all the graphic details, but I want the graphic details, god damn it. Give me The Wolf of Wall Street, but in a rock and roll world in the 80s. That would have been so dope. We didn't get that. We got a movie. It was a movie, and it's not an awful movie. I mean, some of the scenes were edited horribly, but it's not an awful movie. But they're all sort of becoming paint by numbers, whether that's the One Love, whether that's the Elvis, whether that's the David Bowie, they're just becoming very they're similar stories. It's rehashes. They're not getting into much detail. They're not giving the authenticity that the artist deserves and that we as an audience member deserves. And here's the thing. I understand an artist or an estate going, no, you can't make this because we don't want that perception or that narrative of the person to be out there. And that's very fair. That is very fair. We're talking sort of Scorsese and Sinatra. Imagine we were going to get Scorsese directing a Sinatra movie. Like, that would have been, I would have creamed everywhere if we got that movie. But the Sinatra estate were like, listen, we don't want to tell the story you want to tell. Scorsese was like, well, I want to tell the story I want to tell. And the story I want to tell is probably closer to maybe the grittiness of what really went down. But they didn't want to tell that. And that's their prerogative. It's their family member. So I understand not wanting to go into details on certain things. I get that. People have families. People have privacy. That's within their right. But then, don't go and make a crappy watered down version. Do you know what I mean? If you're gonna not do it right, then just don't do it at all. So that is my fear. But the Beatles, he's right. They're right. They are the greatest and the biggest, not maybe greatest is debatable, but the biggest rock and roll band of all time. It's just not even a debate. It's not even a debate. People are still, Drake's still talking about competing with the Beatles in terms of sales. So like, if you're still talking about, bruh, Paul McCartney's out there just like, bruh, I was selling in 72. You're trying to beat my stuff in 66. You're out here in 2019 trying to beat my stuff in 66, bro. So, but that's what they are that influential. So a Beatle, and especially on the heels of Peter Jackson's documentary, that long formed Beatles documentary where it looked so beautiful with that sort of remastered footage and the cleanup that he did on that, where it felt like you were in those recording sessions with the Beatles. It was the lead up to their 1970s Let It Be album drop, and also the roof party they had, and it was the lead up to that, and it was honestly wonderful, absolutely wonderful. It just felt so nice to watch sort of those guys peeled back from the whole rock star facade and just these four artists. It was just about these four artists being super insecure about the starting process of making something, like all creators and artists are, and eventually getting over that hump and getting over it together. And obviously there was the drama of George wanting to leave and all of that stuff sprinkled in there. But as a kid in film school trying to at least make movies for a living, what I drew from that is the fact that like even Paul, George, John and Ringo, when they were making music, felt like their shit was trash. Like in the beginning they were like, oh my god, what am I making right now? But they were able to build on it, and then eventually come out with beautiful songs. So and that's so reassuring just as a creative seeing that. So it was so nice to see. It was so lovely in terms of like feeling like I was back in the 60s, which I hope Fantastic Four does, but we're not talking about Fantastic Four right now. But actually so lovely to do. So I really, really hope we do get this. My only worry about this is 4. Do we need 4 Beatles movies? Like, does Ringo really need his own movie? Like, no disrespect to Ringo and to all you drummers out there, but does Ringo really need his own movie? I don't think so. Why just lump George and Ringo's movie together? Also, no disrespect to George. You know I love you, G, but come on. Just lump them together. We don't need 4 Beatles movies. Like, I want a Beatles movies, but we don't need 4 of them. We don't need a post-credit scene of John being like, Paul, let's go play. Like, we don't... That was my scouser. We don't need that. But that's what we're getting, apparently. So, let me know. Let me know in them comments below, man. Are you guys excited to see a Beatles biopic? You guys think doing it over 4 movies is a good idea? And what other sort of music biopics would you guys be interested in seeing? Obviously, you heard me say that not really into it anymore, but maybe you guys have a good shout, and that might change my opinion. So yeah, drop them in.